What is up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first installment of the History of the Future. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the Star Citizen timeline, specifically, how did we get to 2946? If you didn't know, Star Citizen has a fairly large and interesting story that is continually being fleshed out to supplement what we're going to find out for ourselves when we get into the verse. So how did we go from transporting goods internationally to transporting them from star system to star system? Our story begins on May 3rd, 2075. What could be deemed a normal day, that is until a one Dr. Scott Childress goes on live television standing next to the President of the United States. Dr. Scott Childress and his team at Roberts Space Industries had successfully created the first self-sustaining quantum drive engine, which would allow vessels to travel at 1/100th the speed of light. This advance greatly improved humanity's ability to travel and explore our solar system. At 1/100th the speed of light, we would be moving at a speed of 6,706,166 miles per hour. That would mean that we would be able to travel from Earth to Mars in only 37 hours compared to the 8 months it would take us today. On April 21st, 2113, only 38 years later, RSI had another breakthrough in scientific advance. They have now claimed to have designed the first terraforming device. This technology would allow them to process the atmosphere of a planet to convert it into a sustained oxygen environment, making it habitable for humans. Half of the world is completely thrilled at the implications this device has, but at the same token, there are some who would rather the technology be left alone, claiming nothing good could come of it. In 2120, after years and years of RSI testing and running simulations for their prototype, they finally got the nod from governments around the world to give their device a try, and what better planet to test it on than Mars? As a result of the green lighting, teams of scientists of all kinds were sent to the planet's surface to make sure everything was mapped as well as discovered before the transformation occurred. They weren't about to leave anything to chance. In 2125, only 5 years later, disaster struck on Mars. The terraforming process failed, killing all personnel on Mars, when all of the procedures in the Mars terraforming process had been going great. The planet had a stable oxygen-sustaining environment for 2 weeks straight leading up to the incident. As such, the personnel had a false sense of security and were not wearing the correct protective gear. And 2 days from the planet being declared secure, due to a chemical miscalculation, the atmospheric processors failed, leaving the atmosphere a death trap without a proper breathing apparatus. In 2140, only 15 years later, RSI continued to push the boundaries of known science and technology. After 10 years of development, and with the much appreciated and crucial help from the 999th Test Squadron, the RSI Zeus was born. The Zeus, while only being a 3-passenger ship, was the first consumer-grade spaceship available, and allowed space exploration to come to the masses. It launched with the slogan, and I quote, "The Zeus may be top of the line, but it won't cost a fortune to be yours," end quote. The development of this ship opened the door to the space exploration and expansion age. In 2157, RSI never gave up on the prospect of a successful terraforming of a planet. And as a result, only 40 years later, Mars was successfully terraformed into a stable, oxygen-sustaining environment. The official reveal of this endeavor also included the revealing of a memorial to those who died in the 2025 incident, commemorating their work and to inspire those who would want to explore the universe. In 2214, humanity was determined to continue their exploration of the great unknown. Just a little over 130 years after the creation of the quantum drive, RSI had another breakthrough. With the advances seen in technology, they were able to push their quantum drive technology from 1/100th the speed of light to 1/10th the speed of light. That meant that the previous 37-hour trip to Mars could now be completed in just over 3.5 hours. In 2232, humanity was no longer satisfied exploring and colonizing our own solar system. And, in turn, they launched their own colony ship, the Artemis, in hopes of colonizing the nearest solar system. The crew of the ship was placed into stasis, and the ship was set to slow burn, The only caveat was the ship never reached its destination, and it disappeared on its route to the unexplored system. While the Artemis was the first in a series of ships to have gone missing in the same general area leading to the discovery of the Niso Triangle in 2262, these ships disappeared without a trace, and no matter what kind of investigations were launched, they yielded nothing of use. In 2271, however, 30 years after the first ship disappeared in the Niso Triangle, one brave man dared to explore it to find answers, and found more than he originally came to find. Nick Croshaw, an astro pioneer, found out that the triangle hit a jump point, and was the first ever documented human to travel to another star system, and the very first nav jumper. In 2130, just 9 years after Croshaw's discovery, his namesake system had been completely terraformed. And due to this success, as well as the desire to explore and expand, humankind decided to set aside their differences. This marked the creation of the UNE, or the United Nations of Earth, the new form of government unified in their desire to explore the unknown. On June 12, 2438, the age-old question humanity has always had, are we alone, is finally answered. Vernon Tarr, an explorer who was searching for uncharted jump points, picked up another ship on his radar, and without thinking, he assumed it was another explorer. In fear of competition and the possibility of losing out on a discovery, he opened fire and soon realized afterwards it was an alien vessel, not the explorer he thought it was. After military intervention and a resolution to what had just happened, the alien, nicknamed Jerry, gave the UNE some of his language, and 2 weeks later a delegation arrived in the Davian system, where the first intergalactic peace and trade treaty was struck with the new race known as the Banu. In 2460, by this time in the game's universe, Earth has become overcrowded. It can no longer support the growing human population, but people are too afraid to leave the world that they've known and called home for so long. In response to this issue, RSI launched an ad campaign called The Air You Breathe, geared at encouraging expansion and emphasizing the better resources, air, and opportunities available on newly terraformed planets. The population in return started leaving Earth in droves to embrace the new opportunities promised by this campaign. As of 2516, the UNE had expanded into 12 systems, and due to this expansion, Earth started to feel like it was a distant entity for those outer systems. During this period, a so-called super-Earth was discovered. It was a completely natural oxygen atmosphere world with plenty of vegetation as well as water. This new planet also boasted a respectable amount of jump points around it. Due to these reasons, it was proposed as a forward operating base of sorts to serve as a proxy for Earth for the expanding human race. This new planet was named Terra as a nod of respect towards Earth, and its capital city was named Prime. In 2523, with more than 70% of the human race living anywhere but Earth, a real outcry started from the population of the UNE to reform. Citizens living off Earth either felt like they were underrepresented or not represented at all. As a result, a reforming of the government took place, transforming the UNE into the UPE, also known as the United Planets of Earth. Along with the renaming, the Congress was restructured to have delegates from each planet and a tribunal put in place. This tribunal consists of a High Secretary who is responsible for maintaining government infrastructure, a High General responsible for expansion and protection, and a High Advocate who's responsible for maintaining the law. This new system was met with mostly open arms, but some felt the government resembled fascism a little bit too much. In 2530, humanity was on what could only be described as a frantic race to try and stake claims on new worlds. Most didn't care how they did it, or what the cost was, they only wanted to stake that claim. Gaia Planet Services, in a feverish attempt to terraform a planet, started to assemble their equipment without authorization, and within a short period of time, the workers were taken hostage by an unknown new alien race. The planet they were about to attempt to terraform was in fact inhabited. This new alien race released one prisoner as a sign of good faith. 57 days later, a resolution to this situation was reached, and the United Planets of Earth had now discovered the Xi'an Empire. Although conflict itself was avoided, it didn't stop the mistrust and tension generated by that unfortunate meeting of races. In 2533, the Idris system was discovered. The system quickly experienced a growth in population, as it was one of the United Planets of Earth's recommended growth centers. The system was home to Idris IV, which experienced unprecedented growth, but little did the new inhabitants know that their planet was going to shift focus drastically. In 2541, the human race makes contact yet again with a new alien species in the Leeward systems. This race called themselves the Tevarin, and the initial reaction by the UPE was to reach out to them and offer a place inside the UPE. However, the Tevarin had a different idea. The Tevarin people were around 100 to 150 years behind the UPE in terms of technology, and had just started exploring space. But they were a prideful and martial society who prized the art of combat, and they wanted territory. More specifically, they wanted the UPEs. This marked the beginning of the First Tevarin War. During this conflict, many things happened that would shape the structure of the UEE and the UEE Navy as we know it. It was during this war that the Battle of Idris IV happened, and Colonel Ivar Messer began his impressive campaign under the banner of Operation Nemesis. In 2546, the First Tevarin War was now officially over, after the now Commander Ivar Messer captured the Tevarin leader. At this point, Ivar Messer was such a popular figure, he was able to campaign his way to the office of High General, playing on people's fear of the Xi'an. It was during his time as High General that he was able to restructure the government, proposing the office of Prime Citizen, who would be the single person making all the shots in the government. The tribunal would still be in place, but only as advisors rather than people of power. The suggestion was brought into fruition, and Ivar Messer was elected as the first and last Prime Citizen. Soon after his election, the government was restructured and he declared himself Imperator, ushering in the age of the United Earth Empire. This restructure brought in a golden age, so to speak, of expansion and colonization. In 2603, the Tevarin were a prideful people, and as such, the loss of the First Tevarin War, along with their home planet, Kaleeth, which was resettled and renamed by the UEE to Elysium IV, only served to wound their pride. A new warlord popped up named Karath Thal. Under his leadership, a newly minted Tevarin battle fleet was set to purpose with only one goal in mind: reclaim their homeworld of Kaleeth, inciting the Second Tevarin War. While some humans supported their cause, the UEE was dead set against giving up territory. In 2610, the Second Tevarin War at this point had lasted 7 years, and culminated up to the famed Battle of Centauri, where the Tevarin fleet was defeated by the now legendary Squadron 42. When Karath Thal realized he was never going to take back his homeworld, he rallied the last of his fleet to scuttle their vessels on the planet's surface, deciding if they couldn't live on the planet, then they would die on it. This marked the end of the Second Tevarin War, and left the Tevarin race decimated. What remained was integrated into UEE society. In 2638, the pro-military agenda of the UEE came under fire from certain individuals. One of the loudest and most scathing were the words of Senator Asan Kieran from Terra. The senator cried for the sovereignty of Terra as well as its surrounding systems, but Imperator Messer XI wasn't having any of that. Messer utilized the immense propaganda available to him to discredit the senator, and soon after, the senator disappeared with theories that he was assassinated surfacing, but there was no evidence. In 2681, contact with a small settlement in the Orion system was completely lost. After weeks, it was time to investigate. When they arrived at the third world in the Orion system, all they found was ash. More raids popped up specifically around the Tevarin systems. These were the first Vandal raids. The Vandal didn't appear to have a homeworld, and instead, each clan travels the galaxy in roaming fleets. Due to that, it made it extremely hard to catch them and react to. In 2715, civil unrest against the military regime of the UEE started to become a problem. Tensions were at an all-time high with the Xi'an. The Vandal raids were taking their toll, and trying to maintain protection of all the UEE planets really started to wear on the Messer regime. 2757. Magnus played a major role in munitions manufacturing for the UEE war machine under the Messer regime, and as such, its population was scrutinized and always being watched or searched with some quote-unquote seditionists or anarchists randomly disappearing in the middle of the night. After a decline in production, the schools were suspended for a week to allow child workers to work in the factory and hopefully pick up the slack. One boy was ordered by his foreman after pulling a 16-hour shift to pick up the shift of a boy who had just been put into an anaphylactic shock from exposure to a chemical. This boy refused, and for his refusal, was shot and killed by a guard on duty. Anthony Tanaka, the boy who was killed that day, became the face of the unrest with the Messer regime for many people from that point on. In 2789, with tensions both inside the UEE against the Messer regime and outside the UEE, with the Xi'an continuing to rise, one senator had enough. Senator Terence Akari of Terra struck a peace treaty with the Xi'an Emperor Krei. At the same time, the senator also puts Earth on blast because he believes they are too short-sighted and imperialistic. In 2792, certain people still hadn't learned their lessons when it came to terraforming planets. An unnamed terraforming corporation terraformed Garin 2. The catch? There was developing life on the planet. By terraforming the planet, it killed all life on the planet. When it was revealed that this corp had ties to the Messer regime, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. UEE citizens overthrew the government and placed Aaron Toy of Earth in the position of Imperator, intending to shift the focus of the UEE towards enlightenment and social consciousness. In 2795, humanity learned from its mistakes in regards to terraforming. The Fair Chance Act was passed, and it made it a capital crime to terraform worlds that have developing creatures. These planets were to be left alone, and the creatures were to be allowed to have a chance at evolving. In 2800, the UEE Ark is constructed. The Ark contains a wealth of knowledge and cultural information, and it was created for all species, not just the human race. Some see this as an act of reparation for the damage the human race caused throughout their journeys in space. In 2872, humanity was out to prove that it's not its old greedy and bloodthirsty self. And what better way to prove that than to create life out of nothing? The construction of Kronos begins, a synth world, or in other words, taking a lifeless rock and transforming it into a life-sustaining planet. It is speculated that it might take many decades or possibly centuries to come to fruition. In 2910, the Vandal are becoming more aggressive and attack the Squadron 42 carrier. You might have seen this in the Squadron 42 trailer. This specific battle was said to have lasted 6 hours. In 2920, the economy is starting to fail. It seems like all the money is going towards the Synthworld project, and yet, not a whole lot seems to be getting done. To make matters worse, the disparity between the rich and the poor was growing, leading to increased frustration. On top of all of that, the Vandal are attacking more frequently, and to the dismay of the general populace, nothing seems to be getting done. In 2941, the Historical Truth Act is signed and put into effect. This act declassified millions of pieces of archived data, most notably of which data concerning the Xi'an technology, specifically the Xi'an Scout. 2946, present day in the UEE, and from here on out, history is yours to write. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a comment in the sections below. If you want to hit me with a subscribe, that would help me greatly, and please hit that like button. Peace!